Oh.
Good evening. Today I'm broadcasting from the Toronto Metropolitan University, previously known as Ryerson University, where the equivocal statue depicting Egerton Ryerson rose above the crowds until being knocked down during a public affair in June 2021. A truck arrived on Gallop Street and proceeded to pull down the statue of Egerton Ryerson, preceding a rally based off the findings of 215 Indigenous youths remaining in the Kamloops, BC. Since that moment, alongside the removal of the monument, national debate has flickered about the remembrance, our history, and most importantly, responsibility. Today, we investigate what the monument represented, taking a closer look into why it fell and what pertains to the statue's future. Egerton Ryerson, the statue controversy. Visual description. The Ryerson statue was constructed in 1889, casted in bronze, appearing in tones of green and aged with erosion, strategically depicted in a common Victorian commemorative genre. The statue stood comparable to real-life size, showing Ryerson confidently straight forward, holding a book in his left hand, a way to symbolize education, with a pinpointed gaze fixed ahead to the future. In a way to portray a respectable, well-thought-of professor, the statue wore an academic, long-styled coat conveying authority. The monument was once placed near Gallop Street, along a stone path especially close to the main entrance of the school. The Toronto Star formerly referred to it as a familiar landmark on Gallop Street, positioned prominently at the university's core, which suggests how it was a fundamental aspect to the school's visual identity. Regardless of the statue's watch time, it acts as a definitive reminder of who the university valued and chose to praise. Who Ryerson was. When it's asked who Egerton Ryerson was, he's typically remembered as a crucial constructor to the Ontario public school system. In the midst of the 1900s, Ryerson made standardized testings, helped incorporate teacher training, as well as advocated for regular textbooks and inspections within the school. His initial behaviors have crafted him a more reputable educator, but his overall legacy doesn't flatline and hold a neutral position. Leaving a heavy impact with these ideas stretched far outside the public school system, Ryerson additionally contributed to the thoughts that molded residential schools into what they were. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia, Ryerson's 1847 report was used as the basis for policies that later shaped the residential school system, no longer concocting an education, but an organization surrounded with strict religious instruction, labor with agriculture, and enforced an ideal of European normalities. Ryerson believed that if we stripped Indigenous children from their safety net, their home, and their families, it would make them civilized. An article more recently published dissecting Ryerson's text debate that the search for how Ryerson narrates the human is in search for the extent to which he propagates the mythic figure of a man, referring to how his overall philosophy pushed such a high racial hierarchy in which Europeans or otherwise Christians were set as being the default standard, while Indigenous people of all kinds were positioned in a light of correction. What happened? By the time we hit 2021, there was an intense buildup of pressure for the removal of the statue. A wide variety of individuals expressed concern. Students, staff, various Indigenous groups, as well as multiple activists all want the monument removed, fighting that keeping such an influential and controversial figure like this would normalize not only violence against Indigenous groups, but normalize the way that they were treated in correspondence to the residential school system. After the reveal of Kamloops, the discovery alone caused an immediate outrage. The statue of Ryerson was then coated in red paint, displaying red handprints all over the monument, crafted into a gathering place to mourn those taken. During a rally in June, over 1,000 people walked from the Queen's Park right up until the entrance of the campus, where the statue rested. CBC News reported that the head was removed after the protest ended, morphing the fallen statue into a representation and a symbol of rejecting the construct ideals of colonial authority. As time shortly passed, the President Mohammed released a statement saying the statue will not be restored or replaced. For many, the fall of the monument was not only a protest but a call for accountability, leading to the schools officially abandoning the Ryerson name. What scholars say. Many art historians differ in their interpretation of the removal of Ryerson monument and propose perceptions of what the absent space now indicates. Sarah Betham states that really anything that is destroyed or mutilated, but specifically in this case the statue, the destruction itself becomes a part of the history of the monument. This ideology directly correlates to how viral the mass spread of images were of the statue being pulled down, a moment more powerful and representative of strength than it did while it was ever standing. Betham's viewpoints explain how taking away the statue doesn't erase history, but creates a brand new chapter. But expanding on that, Del Upton insisted on ensuring that there was a collective decision about deciding the aftermath of this event, stating monuments should be recontextualized through open democratic conversation. Fortunately, this outline mirrors the actions of Toronto Metropolitan University's approach to taking a step forward and healing. They formed a task force, including staff and students, and worked in conjunction with Indigenous communities and the public to curate the proper future steps rather than the university working alone. Subsequently, Anne Gordon Reeds warns us to be cautious in assuming that the falling of the statue will solve deeper-rooted societal issues, declaring that taking down the monument does not absolve society from dealing with its past. Reed's arguments expanded the conversations to build beyond the monument, persuading thoughtful and intellectual engagement within the history of residential schools, remembering and shifting towards an act of change. All these points together insinuate the destruction of the statue wasn't the finish line, but really a new beginning for improvement. My opinion. After all, my research pertained to the differences of opinions between outside resources and scholars. I've come to strongly believe that the removal of the Ryerson statue was entirely necessary. To me, a university should be more than capable to represent knowledge, but I'd also expect them to foster inclusion and accountability, to not praise individuals without morality, especially ones who constructed a whole cultural genocide. As a Cree protester explained to the CBC News, the toppled monument marks the beginning of healing for an entire nation, transforming grief to a positive change. Although I agree with this, I also think that Gordon Reed is right. Just removing the statue alone will never be enough. Personally, I deem that the statue should go towards learning. It should be catered towards analyzing our awful past and ensuring such a grand failure never comes to be again. It should be given to an exhibit specifically focusing on the history pertaining to residential schools, with Indigenous communities and groups across all boards leading the narrative, telling their stories. Thank you.